Uh, Welcome to this virtual session. Now, on behalf of the organizers, we welcome Smith as moderator for this session.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, everyone, and a warm welcome to you. A warm welcome as well to all our virtual participants once again. So we have, I think, at the moment about 10 live virtual participants, which is really great, right? And we also hope that during this session we will be able to interact, well, both with the audience here and with the people who are following us live online, right? So again, for those who are online, just feel free to type your questions, type any comments or any, and we'll try to deal with them as well as we can. Okay, so this session is on the political economy of decentralized energy, and I want to introduce this topic by just going through some of the statements that I've been hearing in yesterday's session. So, just to see if my slide works. Just a moment. Okay. Oh, I wanted to introduce myself first. Sorry about that. So about myself, I studied in the Netherlands at Wageningen University, University of Utrecht. Then in 2007, I did some research on pico hydropower, small scale, this really small scale household energy level hydropower in Laos. And I think this pretty much shaped how I've become and what I'm doing here. So from then on, like sort of Southeast Asia became the focus of my research. I turned that research, so a couple of years later now, doing a PhD at the University of Sydney, now looking at not only small-scale hydropower, but also how they function in the bigger context of in Thailand and Laos, the energy policy and politics there. So that's pretty much where I'm coming from, and now actually I'm back teaching at Wageningen University, but still doing research in Southeast Asia. So that's really sort of my geographical focus. I think we have, in this session, we have a lot of other perspectives as well from different countries, so we're in a great position to compare. So again, to introduce the topic, I would like to go over a couple of statements, right, which I think is really crucial, but they haven't really been highlighted or discussed very much. So let me just, so I think one that I heard a couple of times actually is that the failure of microenergy systems is often not because of the technology, but because of the various other elements, such as institutions, market capacities. Right? Then we have statements like, it's not about the kilowatts that are provided by a system, right? But it's about the services or about the changing of practices. Right? So this is, I think, another crucial element for this session. This one is, I think, also a really nice one. I forgot who said it, but someone said yesterday, bringing electricity to the village is not a neutral thing. And of course it's not. You know, like it's bound to change up social relations, not only within the village, but it also, choosing that village in the first place is often also a political, there's a political element to that. This is another really interesting thing. Actually, we haven't really discussed very much. Who actually decides how energy systems look like? So both on a micro scale, but also on the national scale, right? Like what is the role of public participation, for example, in this? I think these are crucial questions. And finally, I think this is one of the first statements that was made, is that we need to change the mindset of people working in the energy sector, right? And this can take place on all kinds of different levels. So again, I've collected these statements. I still don't think they have been really discussed sort of very thoroughly. So what we're doing here in this session is really talking about, and the clue is yet to come. It's talking about, this one. As we're talking about the elephant in the room, right? We've been talking about microenergy systems, but we haven't really discussed the broader sort of social and political context. And that's really what we're hoping to do in this session. So indeed, so the quick questions are, of course, like, and that's a guiding question in this conference: why do microenergy systems succeed or fail? But in this session, we're going to look specifically at what is the role of sort of the broader political economy, or if you like, the context, institutions, power. We're not going to be too. I mean, we can discuss all these issues and see how they play out. So really the aim of the session is to, well, because there's not a lot of this at this point of view, I think in this conference, to share some knowledge, see if we can get some interesting topics together. And then also, of course, we want to, especially for any practitioners that are around, maybe here in the audience or virtually, of course, how can we take these factors then into account when designing or implementing or operating these microenergy systems? Right. So that's very broadly sort of the context of this session. So we got a couple of really interesting papers. First, we have Katharina, then then Jonas van der Straten, who will talk about Tanzania, and then we have a paper by Gary Mella et al. On the institutional dynamics. Right, so I'm hoping to keep these papers fairly short, so 10, 15 minutes each, which will leave plenty of time for a discussion, and also as we go, we're going to try to maybe develop a social science research agenda. Okay, so we have a fairly ambitious agenda for today. So I guess without further ado, I would like to introduce Katharina and ask her to come on stage and deliver a presentation. Good luck.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here today, and I'm very excited to have the chance to have this discussion with you here today. Can I use this as well? Yeah, maybe I just, is it okay? On? Do you hear me? Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Okay, just as a quick introduction, most of the times I talk about mini-grids and microgrids and about the huge potentials which are out there in many developing countries. But since I'm talking about that so much and I get the discussion afterwards, I think this is now really broadly discussed. And so I thought I should focus on something else today and to look at the question about grid connection, because out in all these countries where I've been working, I always I make the experience that so many people are still considering grid connection as the only best solution to provide electricity access to the people who don't have it yet. And I think when it comes to that, it's important to look a bit closer into what we are talking about when we talk about grid electrification. So as a quick introduction, I think for the status quo, we see that in many countries we have really insufficient power supply facilities. This comes with very expensive power generation costs in many places, and therefore lots of people cannot afford to get these electricity access. In addition, this comes with outdated infrastructure, which also raises the costs because efficiencies are pretty low, and also this outdated infrastructure has very high maintenance costs. And in addition to that, there's this unreliable grid access, which forces the people to think of different solutions. And also, when they think of different solutions, very often it's based on fossil fuels. And with this, we have also lots of negative impacts. First, we have the dependency. So if there's issues with transport and distribution infrastructures, the fossil fuel might not be available, and also the costs and also the environmental concerns regarding CO2, for example. So, but when we see what's going on now, there's, I think, a big change happening. In the last couple of years, we see that the renewable energy potentials are growing as the technology is getting more advanced, and prices for all the different renewable energy technologies are falling, and especially in these regions where you have these low electrification rates, there are very high potentials of renewable energies. Just an example here on the slide, the solar irradiation. And also, lots of governments are already aware, are getting aware of the issue and are defining own goals in terms of development goals for providing access to electrification. And they also define their policies to it, but I think there are some challenges with it because they still have to figure out good ways to provide the access. And I think with all these happening, there are now new different pathways to providing electricity access. In the past, there was the grid, and the idea of extending the grid was the only real way to provide access to electricity. But I think now I mean, looking at this conference, all these mini grid solutions, all these smaller scale solutions like solar home systems, pico-grids, and mini grids are evolving. And therefore, we have to take this into consideration when talking about providing access to electricity. What I brought you here today is a very a small analysis of some parameters of grid electricity supply. Therefore, I took some data from the World Bank called the Enterprise Surveys. There, the World Bank is collecting data about challenges and hinderings towards doing business in very, very many countries in different years. And I just to show you, I brought here an overview of constraints towards doing business in Tanzania, as I just was there some weeks ago. And the really interesting fact here is that the second highest ranking aspect